Bitcoin under pressure today, pulling back with stocks, adding on to some recent weakness after a failed breakout above 60,000. Let's talk charts and technicals with Mr. Michael Purves, branching out from his usual VIX and volatility realm to go into Bitcoin. Michael, what has gotten into you, sir?
Well, it's funny. I do cross-asset analysis, and it's funny, just like your prior guest was just talking about gold, and I spent a lot of time on gold myself, and I think I almost by design just never write on Bitcoin, except I did felt compelled to, only because I have so many clients that are involved in it, and I've never just to view bullish or bearish on it.
Well, I'm glad you did. Welcome to the club, Mike. It was only a matter of time. And actually, we spotted something fairly similar. You're looking at RSIs and momentum. Walk me through these charts.
Right, and if this chart was on, a stock or a bond or whatever, or a commodity, it'd be the same conclusion I would draw. Again, so this is not a judgment on Bitcoin fundamental or intrinsic value one way or the other, but I'm simply looking at a bunch of charts through my lens of looking at relative strength indices, and one of the things I don't like from a bullish point of view, but rather from a bearish point of view, I like it from a bearish point of view, is simply that every new high, you see 3 fresh highs there made in this rally since over the last 6 months, and each one of those came with a lower relative strength index, and that is to me a classic indication of fading upward momentum on a stock or in this case Bitcoin that has had put through an enormous rally, but the rally is showing signs that there's fewer people willing to take it up to the level with the sort of enthusiasm that they did in the first parts of the rally. Mm-hmm. So that was certainly one clue I was looking at, as times that maybe the risk return for the bulls is not there in the near term.
Now that's the RSI. You've also got a MACD on a weekly basis. I wanted to pull that one from your notes next, and then get into kind of some of the implications. But first, walk us through what insight you get from, say, a MACD versus an RSI. Is it ultimately the same thing, and how do they kind of play with each other as indicators?
Yeah, I mean, they're cousins, if you will. MACD is basically a measurement of sort of near-term and not so near-term moving averages and how they interplay with each other. You want, when you have a trending asset or stock, you want that momentum to be sustained if you're coming into the party late, or if you're worried about taking, whether it's time to take some profits there. And so when you see these signals start crossing over, and I think if you look it's hard to see in your screen, but if on that lower panel there's a box highlighting sort of a black line that's running over the red line, it gets a little bit too technical for this conversation, but basically what that is also showing is that you're not having that same upward pressure on Bitcoin that you had earlier this year. And what's I think important about highlighting it, I look at daily, weekly, monthly, sometimes annual charts, but I also look at very short-term charts, hourly charts, 30-minute charts, 4-hour charts, and so forth. It all really depends on what exercise I'm performing. But from a longer-term momentum there, like if you ran that MACD on a daily basis, you'd see sort of a lot of sort of similar what you saw on the daily RSI chart. On the weekly chart, it's sort of showing that if that kind of rolls over, if that signal starts rolling over, that could really portend a like people are just gonna like really be on the sidelines for some time, or even push it into a decidedly bearish trend. That signal, back after that huge 2017 rally, you saw that crossover point, and basically Bitcoin got cut in half there. So. These are not predictions that, Bitcoin's going to get cut, is going to go to 25K or 20K. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that these are key signposts to watch, and that you may see the risk to the upside is the advantages of being a bull are weakening steadily. Yeah. And if that signal, that weekly MACD continues to roll over, then you may really catch the attention of some CTAs or algos or traders who are following that signal, and then and then you may really see a strong, pronounced bearish trend, or maybe just a sideways range-bound consolidation. That remains to be determined. But one thing I'm pretty clear on is that the bullish, the upside, the risk of missing out on Bitcoin right now
is getting lower. Now, the sideways part is the one that's most curious to me, given that sideways is not a generally sustainable direction for Bitcoin. It usually goes explosive higher or lower. When I looked at these numbers, it's the only time in history that we've had an all-time high, basically little changed over the past 30 days. Our 30-day rate of change for the last Bitcoin all-time high was only 4%. So your kind of marginal gain from buying it at the previous breakout is very small. And I think that gets into a kind of longer philosophical conversation. But in the short term, Mike, before we close here, its relationship with stocks. When we look at days like today, when there's this kind of risk-off moment, Bitcoin goes in the same direction. Yet in the background, the conversation around Bitcoin's narrative has never been more powerful, that it's supposed to be this sort of inflation hedge. I just pulled this up from Bloomberg today. I mean, we're at the highest correlations between Bitcoin and the stock market valuation since December 2017. I mean, this thing is at like 1, Mike. I mean, how can the Bitcoiners have this narrative that it's anything other than risk at this point?
Well, I think that's a great question. It underscores this sort of conversation about, what is it? Is it a currency? Is it a commodity? Is it just some sort of thing that you can trade very easily? That's sort of a longer term discussion. But there's, your chart. I ran a similar chart just comparing the ARKK ETF to Bitcoin, which ARKK has really exploded over the last 9 months, like Bitcoin did. It has a strong retail following and support. And by the way, the spike in that chart and the correlation, that's from March 2020, when correlations went to, went across everything because of the violence, with the VIX going to 85 and so forth. But the point being here is that certainly ARKK has come in a lot. That may help lead Bitcoin down further if this retail shareholder base or Bitcoin base is feeling a little bit exhausted and maybe wounded. If they were late to the party, then that could be another sort of warning sign for Bitcoin bulls.
Now, basically your point is, look, the correlation is still positive between these two. If that kind of froth came out of ARK, then maybe some of that similar froth and willingness to tolerate risk. Mike, if we do get a broader move in BTC, and if we have that kind of decline from that high, do you want to hold stocks as risk assets if that's happening? I mean, we know that stocks don't move as dramatic as BTC, but do you want to be long risk if that happens?
I mean, I would say this. I would frame, if you see stocks that are heavily retail supported, a lot of these exciting, sort of tech stories that got bid up with a sort of, basically the decade absence of retail investors came back just before COVID hit. And then it really accelerated this year. So there is probably some exposure there. But on the other hand, the stuff that hasn't been so fashionable, I don't buy Bitcoin's correlation with the market may be high right now, but I think just like with gold can correlate positively with equities or negatively with equities. There's a whole bunch of other things going on there. So I wouldn't be too troubled by buying other parts of the equity complex. And I don't know if if Bitcoin plummets, to 30,000 in the next week, will that ricochet into every part of the stock market? Yeah, probably to a little bit. But I think the lasting damage would really be probably more into some of the really high flying stuff that we've seen. And a lot of the quote unquote boring stuff will probably be immune to it. Just as it would be if gold sold off $400 in the next week. Okay.
Mike, love the analysis. Makes a lot of sense. Which was the last part, Mike?
Yeah. No, just following up on your prior guess, I do not think gold's going to fall $400 in the next couple of weeks. I'm on the same side of him there and so forth. So just wanted to clarify.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Great stuff. Nice way to close us out here thinking about Bitcoin on the charts and the technicals. Michael Purves, CEO at Tallback and Capital Advisors.